Attention, all curious minds, innovators, and trendsetters. It's time to pause, lean in, and get ready for an extraordinary journey as we dive deep into the fascinating realms of life, technology, entertainment, and business. Let's explore, learn, and grow together. Brace yourselves, for the next thrilling episodes of Hipther Talks is about to take off. Counting down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we go.
Hi everyone, Zoltan here. We're back again this week at Hipther Talks, and we are blessing the microphone once again. And this time we are speaking about responsible gaming. And of course, what better way to do that is by finally getting back at an old friend, Duncan Garvie, founder and trustee at BetBlocker, an ADR official. That's an alternative dispute resolution official service. So Duncan, nice to see you.
It is an absolute pleasure to be back, Zoltan. Great to speak to you again.
All right. So Duncan has been at our meetups, at our virtual meetups a couple of years ago, and things changed in the meantime. And I don't know if our audience is very familiar with the Casino Reviews website, but back in the days there was no mention about responsible gaming there. They were mostly focusing on just like having reviews, but later these dispute resolution services have appeared, and now they are actually regulated. But before we dive into the questions, Duncan, maybe just say a few words about yourself to the audience, and maybe say a few words about your company as well.
Absolutely, Zoltan. I founded a site called thepog.com back in 2011. Time's flying by on me.
Yes.
Basically, what we were one of the first alongside Casino Meister and Ask Gamblers to start managing player complaints against gambling operators. Around about 2015, when the UKGC license was coming in, they introduced what was known as an alternative dispute resolution requirement for operators. So effectively, UK licensees had to provide an approved third party to manage complaints. We were the only affiliate-based complaint management system to be approved by the UKGC. A few years later, around about 2018, Malta followed suit and introduced its own ADR system. Again, we were the only affiliate-based site to receive approval to act as an ADR. In 2017, we also launched a blocking software, we'll talk more about that later, called BetBlocker. Effectively, we were seeing a rise in responsible gambling claims, and this was one of the solutions that we looked to put forward. By 2019, that had grown significantly, and the business couldn't afford to sustain it anymore, so we broke it off and we registered it as a charity. Now, right through till now, I serve as one of the trustees for the charity. I sold the POG in 2023, and I've stayed on after the sale to act as the head of ADR services for the new owners, Plexer. And that's where we're at. Basically, we're currently building up a new product. We've migrated the POG to casinoreviews.com, and we're building up this new ADR service and entering new markets.
All right, so it's quite the journey. So my first question would be about if you could tell us more about casinoreviews.com and the journey to becoming an MGA approved alternative dispute resolution service, ADR. Yeah. And maybe you could tell us what sets ADR services apart from the others in the industry since it's approved.
Yeah. Well, with the migration, with the sale of my company and the migration to the new site, we've had to seek reapproval. Effectively, and this is perfectly reasonable. Regulators want to make sure that the new owners are fit and the new business model is appropriate and independent to act as an ADR. So, yeah, the last year and a bit we have been pursuing reapproval. We received approval from the Consumer Affairs Council in Malta in December. So we now act as ADR for about a quarter of the Maltese gambling sector. So that's about 300 different gambling operators. We're currently waiting on the UK GC, but we'll discuss that more in a wee while. Primarily the difference between different complaint handling services. I suspect a lot of your audience are probably more familiar with the affiliate dispute mediators like Ask Gamblers, Casino Guru, Casino Meister. The big difference between those informal dispute mediators and an official alternative dispute mediation service, or ADR, is that ADRs are empowered by the regulator. Now, this carries a couple of advantages. In the first instance, the operators have to direct players to their ADR at the end of the complaint management process, their internal complaint management process. So if the player is still unhappy at the end of the internal process, the operator is required by their license to provide them information of where to escalate their claim to next. The second big advantage is where an operator fails to adhere to the ruling of an ADR, the ADR can escalate that to the regulator, basically informing the regulator that officially the operator isn't complying with the ADR process. And finally, and one of the biggest advantages is that ADRs are actually empowered to provide legally binding rulings, where your standard complaint site, informal complaint site, relies solely on their commercial leverage, their relationships with different operators, and the negative press that they can create by publishing a negative report. An ADR can actually issue a legally binding ruling, i.e. a ruling that can be enforced in a court.
Right.
So it adds a lot of authority and a lot of weight. It ensures that there's a far higher rate of compliance with the ADR's outcome on the complaint, ruling on the complaint.
All right, so this is the Malta Gaming Authority approved ADR service, and you are also aiming for the UK one by the UK Gaming Commission, and the approval is probably coming in the coming weeks, right?
Well, we're certainly hoping. I mean, we can't foreguess necessarily the regulator's process, but we're certainly optimistic that we'll receive approval in the near future.
Since our audience is very broad audience, coming from tech industries and coming from multiple eras, sectors, they're most probably now finding out how these things work.
Yes.
And it's good that we have the best person to explain it. So, and maybe in regards to this UKGC ADR approval, could you tell us what challenges have you faced during this process and how did you overcome them? And maybe say something about versus the MGA approval as well, because it might be different scenarios.
There are some differences. They're broadly the same.
All right.
Is what I would say. They are broadly the same. ADR is a system that was put in place by EU legislation issued in 2013. And both the UK before Brexit and Malta subsequently built their ADR systems on this core EU legislation.
Okay.
However, after Brexit, the UK has made some small changes, so there are minor differences. The biggest challenge we've faced, and I intend absolutely no criticism of anyone else here, is just simply the slow pace of
Okay.
regulatory applications. It's understandable. It's necessary, is what I would stress, but it can be frustrating. No regulator moves at a quick pace. They take a slow, measured approach and look to ensure that they have gone through everything with a fine-tooth comb before they will commit to moving forward. So yeah, the slow pace is a challenge to manage, especially in a commercial business where this is a bottleneck that holds up other work, a blocker that stops us moving on to other enterprises that we're looking to pursue. It's managing expectation within the commercial side of the business about what the timeframes on the regulatory side are going to be. As to how you address that, on both ends, it's dialogue. It is building relationships. It's speaking to people. It is communicating clearly. It is internally. It is ensuring that the team are well informed about the expectations and how this is likely to progress. On the regulatory side, it is building a relationship with the licensing official that is reviewing the application so that you can respond proactively, enthusiastically, in a cooperative manner to any concerns that they raise, so you can quickly readjust the plan within the business to address any concerns that the regulator has. It's challenging, it's not easy, but it's proven successful so far. We already have the MGA approval in the bag, and as I say, we're hoping, fingers crossed, that the UKGC will come through very shortly.
I'm sure it will. So my next question is, because like I told you, our audience is very, very broad. Most of them probably thinking that, man, this guy owns an affiliate business. How can he be impartial and fair when it comes to these services? Because you make money out of these brands and operators. So my next question would be, how do you ensure impartiality and fairness in your ADR service, given that CasinoReviews.com is also an affiliate business and has to sustain itself?
This is a very good question, and it's one I quite enjoy answering. The truth is that as ADR services go, the affiliate model is actually counterintuitively less open to commercial bias than the standard model. The standard model tends to be smaller law firms who charge operators a fee directly to manage complaints. Now, why do I say that the affiliate model is less open to bias? Well, that's because when you charge directly for per complaint, and you give a ruling that, say, the licensee isn't happy with, the licensee can simply choose to switch to another ADR service. As the standard ADR model, you then lose all revenue on that future complaints from that client. With the affiliate-based model, if a licensee decides to move to another ADR service, it doesn't directly impact our commercial revenue streams in the same way. We can simply switch to advertising a different partner in the same spot and recover the majority of the commercial loss that we would experience. So from a commercial perspective, as I said, it's counterintuitive, and naturally I understand why people ask the question, but from a commercial perspective, the affiliate-based model is actually less prone to that type of bias. Nevertheless, in a system and in a operation like an ADR, it's not simply the reality, it is the perception of impartiality that's important. So we have to work very, very hard, and it's one of the questions that in both application processes the regulator has challenged us on, is how are you going to convince the public that a brand like Casino Reviews that's advertising gambling is giving impartial decisions? And the answer to that really is in policy building. Firstly, internally, we have a complete Chinese wall around the ADR department. What that effectively means is that there is no crossover between the commercial department and the ADR department. We have no oversight, no knowledge of what the company is doing on the commercial side. And the commercial side have no knowledge, they have no access to, and no role in the complaint management process.
Oh, okay.
Secondly, our ADR team, right now, that is me. I'll be clear about that and transparent about that, but we are looking to build it out and have the policies in place for the future. Our ADR team is remunerated by a fixed salary that is unrelated to the outcome of complaints. We don't have KPI targets or anything like that that would force or could compromise the integrity of the complaint management process. We then look to build out, I've spent a lot of the last year building out policies around conflicts of interest, our whistleblowing policies, we have a register of interests. Any team member who has any role in the management of complaints has to sign our register of interests. And what this means is they have to declare any holdings that could potentially impact their ability to provide impartial rulings. So, for instance, if they have shares in a specific gambling company or a personal relationship, a wife or a sibling working somewhere else, these sorts of things have to be declared. We've put in place policies that our ADR officials have to sign at point of employment, where they declare an agreement to a side letter effectively to their employment contract that they will adhere to the Nolan principles of public life. Now, I don't expect your audience to be familiar with that, but if you go away and do a quick search for the Nolan principles of public life, you'll find that this is a UK government policy that basically requires ministers and other civil servants to conduct themselves honourably in all aspects of their public life, even when they're not conducting their job. And over and above all of that, we also look to pursue membership and approvals from various external organisations to evidence our compliance with higher regulatory authorities. So, for example, right now, I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. I'm a member of the International Ombuds Association, and I'm a member of the International Council for Commercial Arbitration. So we maintain all of these memberships. In the near future, with the presumption that the UKGC application comes through, we will be looking to apply for membership of the Ombudsman Association as well. And it's using these other authoritative organisations that oversee the practice of out-of-court dispute resolution internationally. It's evidencing that we're meeting their standards, and that's how we build user trust. This is all an effort to communicate very clearly to any user, any third party that's looking at us, that we are going above and beyond the regulatory standards, that we are really dedicated to ensuring everyone has confidence in the impartiality of our service. And finally, when we're talking about evidencing the impartiality of the service, the EU legislation goes a long way to doing that in itself. The part of the legislation under which ADRs are approved and appointed requires that services publish annual and biennial reports on the practices of their service. Now, this details all sorts of things, from the amount of money returned to consumers, to the length of time the average complaint process takes, how many complaints take longer than 90 days, the ruling rates, how often do we favor the consumer, how often do we favor the trader, all sorts of data. Now, we ensure to publish that proactively. In fact, right now we're publishing it every 6 months to build consumer trust again. And of course, I'm almost forgetting, we also, unlike other other approved ADR services, we publish a complaint report for every single complaint, which allows players to look at the reports and see what our process is, how complaints were managed. It allows them to see what other types of complaints are arising against the same group. And it actually allows them to, if they chose to do so, forensically backtrace the figures in our biennial or annual and biannual reports and confirm that we're reporting the right numbers.
Oh.
Well, a lot of work goes into to evidencing the impartiality of the service.
Yeah, hopefully the audience is now clear on this. And
if the audience managed to take all that in that quickly, they're better at it than me.
But let's also talk about BetBlocker and betblocker.org, which provides a critical service for responsible gambling. You already mentioned in your introduction that it has now become a charity. But maybe you can tell us even more about it and how has it evolved since its inception? What was the idea behind it? What was the inspiration behind it?
Oh, the inspiration behind it was actually the complaint service.
Okay.
Back in around about 2017, we were seeing a steady increase in the number of responsible gambling complaints that were coming across my desk. Now, it's not that there were, in my opinion, it's not that there were suddenly more people experiencing gambling harm. It was the introduction of the UKGC license. More players were becoming aware, even outside of the UK market, because of the UKGC's actions, more players were becoming aware of their rights.
All right.
And we're expecting certain protections from operators. Now, as anyone who's worked within the sort of responsible gambling area in the industry will be able to tell you, you do see some tragic cases coming across. And we were no exception to that. As much as we would like to be able to help every player in that case, we can't. Sometimes an operator will refuse to cooperate with us. Sorry, 2 seconds. Yeah, sometimes an operator will refuse to cooperate with us. Sometimes, unfortunately, the situation's got away from everybody's control before the operator could legitimately be expected to have intervened. And I was deeply uncomfortable turning around to some of these people and simply saying, there's nothing we can do to help you, sorry. So we started looking internally for other resources that we could signpost, other support services that we could direct people in these situations onto. The first thought that we had was blocking software. It just seems like the natural first step is to put a barrier between the user and gambling. Let's start there. When we looked at the blocking softwares that were available on the market at the time, they were all subscription-based. When we're dealing with people who quite often don't know where next month's rent is coming from, telling them that they have to go and pay to get support is counterintuitive. It's exacerbating one of the primary markers of harm. So after a lot of discussion, we decided to try and set up our own blocking software internally and distribute it free of charge. So we did that in 2017. A couple of years later, the uptake on the service had been quite high, at least for a startup project like our own. And the business was struggling to meet the commercial needs of maintaining this product. So we were faced with a choice. We could either commercialize the product and start charging for it. We could shut the project down and that would have meant thousands of people left without the support that we had been providing them, or we could break it off and register it as a charity and try and raise funding for it via donations. Obviously, we didn't want to charge for it. That would have undermined the core intention that we set out, the need we set out to meet. Shutting it down seemed soul-destroying, frankly. The idea of shutting it down would have been soul-destroying, and to leave all of the thousands of people we were helping at that time without that support just didn't seem fair. So we decided to let go of the entity and break it off and registered it as a charity. And we've been functioning as a charity ever since. And shortly after registering as a charity, we were approved by the UK Gambling Commission to be included on what's known as their RET list. The RET list is a little bit of a misnomer. It's really research, education, and prevention. Each UKGC licensee every year is required to make a donation to a charity that deals with research, one that deals with education, and one that deals with prevention. So we were approved on the RET list as a prevention charity, which allowed us to receive donations from UKGC licensees. And that's how we've funded the project since, and that's where we built it up from.
All right. So basically now you guys at BetBlocker are supporting tens of thousands of users, and as far as we know, you are also expanding the language support. And what are some of the key impacts you've seen from the service in promoting responsible gambling globally? Because I, in my opinion, it has been a great idea, which has made other projects become available later.
Absolutely. Look, the first thing I would say with regard to BetBlocker is I'm biased. I love BetBlocker. I love blocking software. I think it's a fantastic tool that should have far higher uptake than it does. But it is not a magic bullet.
Yeah.
It doesn't cure gambling addiction. It doesn't fix the problem. The reality is that no matter how strong we make our block, and our blocks are strong, but they're not impervious. No matter how strong we made our block, all you need to do is buy a new mobile phone, and that's you got round it. 150 euros, done. Blocking software is one of the tools that can be engaged to help gambling addiction. And as I said, I think it's a fantastic part of that toolkit. We are there to buy you the time. So when you feel that urge and it's 10 o'clock at night and you've got that itch to play again, we're there to buy you until the next day to cool off, to think about it and think, yeah. But as far as the international perspective to this goes, I mean, what BetBlocker was initially set up to meet UK needs. It was tailored towards the UK licensing requirements. We've moved away from that slightly in the intervening years. That's not to say that we've moved away from the UK licensing standards. We haven't. We still meet all of those, but we've extended it in various other ways. But we quickly realised that while the UK was an important market and it had the most evolved, the most mature structures in place for supporting charities at that time, the reality was gambling addiction was no different in Zimbabwe or India or Argentina than it was in the UK. And having done a review within the last couple of years of all of the support agencies in each different country around the world, there are many countries that have little to no support for gambling addiction. They still have a high proportion of internet accessibility. Most of their population still have mobile phones. but they have very little in the way of any support services for gambling addiction. So from BetBlocker's perspective, it's all the more important to make our service available where there are few others, where there's not much help. The simple truth behind gambling addiction in the online market is that humanity was never evolved to cope with the level of stimulus that we currently have. The two Pandora's boxes we've opened, the internet and smartphones. Whereas 25 years ago, if you wanted to place a bet, you had to travel somewhere to do it. We are now all carrying a mobile phone. We are all the time. We are within 2 clicks, 3 clicks of a casino, of a bingo hall, of a poker room, of a sports book. We were never meant to have that degree of access to gambling. Now, that's not an anti-gambling statement. It's just an acknowledgement of the facts of the reality as they exist. We can't put these things back in the box, and there are so many bigger positives to the connectivity that the internet and mobile phones give us that we wouldn't want to put it back in the box even if we could. But we do need to start taking steps to address the negative sides of these technologies. And that's, as I've been saying, that's where I see BetBlocker is really important. Especially where we can deliver support in communities that have next to no other support, because we don't know most of the time who our users are. I don't know whether a user is in Zimbabwe or they're in London. But it makes more of a difference to the user in Zimbabwe.
All right. So maybe could you point out some of the biggest challenges in promoting responsible gambling, and how do initiatives like BetBlocker and your ADR service at casinoreviews.com address these challenges?
The biggest challenge in promoting responsible gambling is the phrase responsible gambling itself. It is a complete misnomer. People think that we have trained the public, educated the public to think responsible gambling is what you do when you have a problem. No, that's not what responsible gambling is. That's crisis management. We are responding to the problem and we are taking steps to address the problem. Responsible gambling is what everybody should do every day. If you're going to play, think about what your limits are. Set a limit before you start. Don't go over it. Put in place protections to stop you spending more than you intended to spend. Be sensible. It is no different than getting in a car to drive. What do you do when you get into the car to drive? Click, clunk. It's that simple. Most people don't even think about it anymore. You belt up. Responsible gambling is exactly the same thing. It is what everybody should be doing. The biggest challenge in promoting a product like BetBlocker certainly is in trying to change that very entrenched public narrative about what responsible gambling is. Now, BetBlocker offers 2 different types of block. On the one hand, we offer our traditional block. The users lost too much. They're maybe a bit panicked. They're worried. So they look to put in place a continuous block. They want to stop gambling from now, and they can choose how long the block lasts for. That's our crisis response mode. But we also offer a secondary mode, which is our calendaring feature. Now, this allows people to block in advance. So if you know that maybe on a Friday night, after a few beers, that's when you're prone to gambling a bit too much, you can set the block to come on Fridays. If you want to make sure your bills are paid before you play, you can look up your payday and set the block to come on for the week after payday every month. But the big challenge there is getting everyday consumers, everyday users to think, I want to use the calendaring feature, because so many people are so programmed into thinking responsible gambling is what you do when you have a problem, that they don't think about what they should do before they have a problem. With regard to the dispute mediation and ADR, it's very much about education. When we're tackling this sort of issue, we ensure that any complaint that comes across our desk that has even indications of problem gambling, we signpost relevant support agencies to help that user and sort of try to diminish unhealthy attitudes. For instance, we'll have users that talk about chase or when if I'd been allowed to play a bit more, I could have won that back. I would win that back. They've cut me off when I'm losing. Try and sort of tackle these myths about gambling that, for instance, the overdue win. Speak to them and say, look, that's not actually how gambling works. You're no more likely to have a win because you've been on a losing streak. It's about education. And again, it's about talking in content across the website, even in our more commercial content, about how gambling really works, dispelling those myths, educating players about how games really function, how bonuses really function, educating users about the terms they really need to watch out for and bonus contracts. It's all about trying to help players understand the market better and push them towards healthier engagement with gambling.
All right. It's a good point that you mentioned that in terms of when to approach responsible gambling. And the first thing, it's like, but we need to also mention this because it's summertime. It's similar to hydration. Once you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. You should be drinking before that.
That's a really good example. That is a perfect example. This isn't just charities. It's not just ADRs. As a sector, if we want to move into the future and if we want to build trust with consumers, then we need to start working to educate our customers effectively to think about these things before the problem. Look, that will not stop gambling addiction. It will not stop everybody from having a really bad loss. These big losses and negative outcomes will still occur. There will still be cases. But the more people we educate to take steps in advance of a problem, the more we will reduce the number that reach that crisis point, or at least slow down how long it takes them to get to that crisis point. And that's what we're really trying to do, is improve outcomes and reduce the harms that vulnerable people experience.
All right. So my next question is the last question, actually. It's a typical one about goals. And I'm interested in if we are looking ahead, what are your goals for both casinoreviews.com and betblocker.org in the next few years? And particularly, I'm interested in the terms of enhancing responsible gambling practices and, of course, support.
Of course. Speaking for Casino Reviews first, and I'm going to caveat this because I am part of a far larger team. I represent one department within a far larger team. We are looking to ensure that we are approved in every market that offers ADR. We're looking to expand the number of clients that engage our ADR service. I mean, we are the only ADR service that provides our service to licensees free of charge. No, every other approved ADR is charging operators a fee. So we're reducing overheads, compliance overheads in that respect. We also need to work to build trust in the ADR system. There's a lot of legitimate questions being asked and ADRs have to do a better job of demonstrating transparency and evidencing that they are offering impartial rulings, impartial and fair rulings. We need to work to improve consistency amongst ADRs. It should not be the case. Look, humans are flawed, and any human-based system will experience errors. But it should not be the case that two similar claims submitted to two different ADRs receive different rulings. And the only way to ensure consistency across the sector is to work towards, firstly, improved oversight, and secondly, improved communication between the different ADR providers, sharing of best practices, discussion of issues that are coming up. These sort of things are critical. So, I mean, we're really looking to push to, as a website, as a business, to expand our reach and to improve the standing of the ADR community across the sector, and to build consumer trust. This is the most important thing. It's about raising the bar, especially amongst the affiliate sector. The affiliate sector has, for a lot of reasons, garnered quite a negative reputation over the years, and it's about evidencing by, or leading by example, effectively looking to assert we're here, we're doing the right things, and we're being open and transparent about it. And that's how you build trust with consumers. For BetBlocker, this is a bigger question. I mean, the reality of BetBlocker is right now we're helping tens of thousands of people every day. We know that. We have good data on that. But the truth of the matter is we could be helping millions. And there's no reason that we shouldn't be. From a technological point of view, we could increase our user base by tenfold overnight, and our system wouldn't be breaking a sweat. We are very confident we can help a lot more people, and that's about improving our reach, getting the word out, working with partners to inform users about this free service we offer. It is free, it is anonymous. These two factors should encourage anybody. If you're going to gamble, slap BetBlocker on your phone. Set up the calendaring feature. Say, well, actually, I know the kids' school holidays are coming up, and I don't want to be distracted because I want to make sure I spend some quality time with them. Block the holidays. We're just about to, well, hopefully later this year, we want to launch an upgrade to the calendaring feature that will allow users to block by hour. So, for instance, you could say, well, actually, it's not good for me to gamble after midnight. I'm going to block between midnight and 6 a.m. So we're looking to increase awareness of the service. We're looking to encourage more users to think about these things earlier. We're, as you mentioned earlier, we're trying to expand into as many languages as possible. Right now, we offer, let's see if I can remember it off the top of my head. We've got English, obviously. We've got Dutch, German, Spanish, Norwegian, Swedish, and Romanian. Each and every time that we have launched in a new language, when I look at our Google Analytics stats, I see between a 4 and a 10 times jump in the number of users we're receiving on our website whose browsers are set to those languages. It's a significant jump. And when we think about it, it makes perfect sense. A lot of the BetBlocker's users are coming to us at a point of crisis. Their heart's racing, adrenaline's flowing their head. You've got that fuzz in your ears. We've all been there at some point. We've all felt like that. When you're thinking like that, you can't think clearly.
Yeah.
setup process while they're thinking like that, and then add on top, it's another language.
Yeah.
It's not feasible. So the more languages we launch in, the more accessible we make it to all of these other communities that where they maybe spoke English as a second language and they're struggling to interpret all the instructions in English. So over the course of this year, we're hoping to launch in another 10 languages. We've currently got a project with Gamble Aware in the UK to launch in Polish, Ukrainian, and Russian to try and help minority communities in the UK access support services. We're partnering with some treatment providers in Brazil to provide Brazilian Portuguese. We're not quite there yet, but we've started the journey. We're partnering with some treatment providers in Zambia to deliver the service in 3 different African dialects. So we're working, we're pushing to get this out as far as possible and to just expand the reach and the awareness of the service. We can handle the extra users, so there's no reason that we shouldn't try and make as many people aware of it as possible and get as many people using the service as possible.
That's fair enough. Thank you so much for this, and I hope that the audience appreciates all these inputs. It has been extensive, and this is how it should be. This is
I've
education.
talked your ear off. I've talked your ear off. I apologize.
No worries. This is something that we like doing. So yeah, this is education, and hopefully that the audience will also appreciate and also look up such tools.
I really
before
hope
you
so.
need it. Before you need
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today, Zoltan. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. And thank you so much for your time, Duncan. I know it's very hard for you because you juggle so much stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will get to have you here again and see you at maybe
No
at
doubt.
our in-person conferences. So if you want to give any shout outs to everyone, this is the time to do it.
Oh, you put me on the spot here. There's too many people to remember. Look, just from a bet blocker's perspective, I would like to give a shout out to all of the operators and organizations within the sector that have donated over the last 12 months to support BetBlocker. It has made a huge difference, and tens of thousands of people every day have protection because of your support. Thank you. I'm not going to go down into naming individual donors because I might forget somebody, and I don't want to forget any of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zoltan.
All right. Thank you once again for your time, Duncan, and thank you our audience for sticking around. We will be back next week with more crazy stuff around technology. Speak soon, everybody. Take good care.
And that's a wrap for this section of Hipther Talks. Thank you for being a part of our journey today. Don't forget to tune in next week for more insights and discussions. Stay connected with us on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and more. Until then, keep exploring and keep growing. We'll see you next time.